Sometimes the next best move isn't to start a business, it's to buy a business. Hey, I'm Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice podcast, and we got a great guest on today's show. We have Christian Baldwin joining the podcast. Christian is the managing director of Black Diamond Capital Advisory Firm. And we have all sorts of conversations that we have today about not just buying businesses, but selling businesses. Over the years and the craziness that came with COVID and the economy and all sorts of random shenanigans that we've had in recent years, many people are looking to both buying and selling businesses as their next big entrepreneurial move rather than starting something from scratch. We get into all the details on today's episode, but before we dive in, we have a word from one of the amazing businesses that sponsors the podcast. Of course, if you ever thought about sponsoring the podcast, you can always reach out, Blake at goodadvicecoaching.com, or you can support our podcast for as little as $5 a month on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. There's one single piece of advice that I give to business owners who are ready to scale their business drastically. And that's knowing exactly what you need to hand off so that you can continue focusing on what you're an expert in. It amazes me when I talk to business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping and tax prep, and worse, that they're going through all this paperwork at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight, slaving away trying to make sense of all of the numbers for their business. Business owners who are making it happen have already figured out that you can't do it all yourself. That's why I recommend Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions. Not only is he an expert in bookkeeping and tax prep, but what I love about Steve is that he'll sit down with you and help you make sense of the value of your business beyond just reading a spreadsheet. You'll be able to make better decisions, and more importantly, you're going to save yourself the crucial time you would have spent going through QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is that keeps us up late at night. So save yourself some time and some money by giving Steve Lay a call at Equity Business Solutions, and he'll show you the value beyond your numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutionsllc.com to find out more. All right, Christian, it's great to have you on the podcast today.
Great to be here with you, Blake.
We've known each other a long time. I'm surprised that I never thought to ask you any earlier.
I'm sure you went down your list and you finally made it to the bottom.
Let me find.
Here we are.
It's like, why not? Let's get him on here. So, but really, it's great to have you on the show today. It's always great to also to have a Fayetteville native, like a local business on the podcast, which actually isn't the norm. We usually have people from all over. So it's good to have you on today. The listeners have already heard an intro with me talking about you, but give us like the 30-second spiel. You know, who are you? What do you do?
Well, my name's Christian Baldwin. I own Black Diamond Mergers and Acquisitions. We really exist to help people buy and sell companies. That's really the main thing. We're a low to mid-market investment banking firm in Arkansas, which means that we help businesses that are usually about $1 million EBITDA or more try to find a good home when they need to transition, or if they want to grow by acquisition. Personally, I moved here to Fayetteville in 2006. Grew up in South Arkansas. Spent some time on the East Coast. Bounced around a little bit.
What part of Arkansas?
Magnolia.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, great little town if you've never been there. But yeah, I got a lot of life lessons that I learned down in South Arkansas. And then 96 moved. I graduated high school from Magnolia in 1996 and then went to Virginia for a little while. Spent a few years on the East Coast and somehow convinced my wife to move back to Arkansas in 2006. And we've been here ever since.
So you met her in Virginia.
That's right.
Okay. So when you were giving the plan of we're going to go to Arkansas, what was her perception of Arkansas?
It was a real negotiation. Yeah. When I first met her, she didn't really realize that anything existed west of the Mississippi. And actually, we do wear shoes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a little education that I had to, provide to her. But once she visited, she was sold on it. She just said, look, we got to go back and see my family, twice a year.
Yeah.
And commit to doing Christmas in Richmond and going to the beach out there. So that was an easy trade.
It reminds me of, I was on a business trip and I met a woman. We were like sharing a shuttle bus and we were making small talk. She's like, where are you from? And I said, oh, I'm from Arkansas. And she's like, I drove through Mobile just the other day. I was like, that's Alabama. And then she did it again though. She goes, oh, well, I've been to Phoenix. And I was like, you're just kind of going down the A names of
Right,
states,
yeah.
but it is nice to tell people.
Alaska, yeah, right. I mean,
it's very cold around there. But it's nice that I was on a call this morning and I was talking about like what's in Arkansas, and I was like, yeah, we have Walmart, if you ever heard of it, but it's kind of fun to like people have the perception of like what even is here to then tell them about some of our great local businesses.
Yeah, all they have to do is come one time and then they're usually hooked.
Now, for people listening, a lot of times when people think about starting a business, which I don't know how much you want to go into like the history, you had Black Diamond, and then there was a period you were working with another firm where you had merged Black Diamond, and correct me if I'm using any of the wrong terminology here. And then you separated about, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and Black Diamond was its own entity again. You're managing 7 employees. A lot of times when people think about starting a business, they start with, I guess, less intimidating things than like buying and selling businesses and assisting customers in that way. I'm very curious how you got into doing this kind of work.
Prior to this, I was in telecom. So I spent about 10 years in the telecom industry. And back around 2012, there were a lot of changes happening in that industry. Most notably, SoftBank got involved. They started making really big investments in United States companies, and things were being more commoditized back then. This was post Alltel selling to Verizon, and a lot of those big mergers had taken place. The dust had been settling. And at the time I was working for Sprint, and I really loved the management and the people that I had kind of grown up with over the previous decade. Well, they all started leaving to do other things, and it just didn't feel like I was able to make like enough of a contribution anymore. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole nother side to this story that's really part of my faith journey, to be honest with you, where I really had to do some serious soul searching about like, why do I not feel like I'm doing what I should do when I go to work? Because everybody else on the outside looking in would tell me, man, you have a great job, And I did, and I was very thankful for it. I just didn't have any peace about it at all, And so I just really had to struggle through that. So I decided, since we were here in Fayetteville, that maybe we should start to look for a small business to acquire. And that's really what led into what now is Black Diamond, because it was my own experience, and it was so difficult. It was like, I mean, if you ask for some information, you might get it, you might not get it. The person that's giving it to you could be the business owner. Do they even understand what it is? Who knows? It's like so frustrating, because in my mind, it should have been a very simple, very efficient. Show me your balance sheet. Let's talk about the business. Look at your income statements. Where are the growth opportunities? That kind of thing. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of discipline when it comes to small business owners. It's not really their fault necessarily. It's just usually they're doing what they can to keep up with the customer demands, employees, and they're doing 100 things at the same time. But it makes it really hard for somebody looking at it from the outside, trying to understand what's really going on. And so I had a lot of friends that I had known from undergrad and other places where they were doing investment banking, on Wall Street or in Chicago or larger markets. I just started talking to them and said, hey, like, how do you guys look at this? And they were looking at bigger companies and everything, but they have a very well-defined process for it. And that's what we try to do here. So even back then, I said, I think maybe that's what I should do. Like, how should I help people? I mean, that's what I coach our team here. We have to figure out how we're going to help somebody. Is it a family? Usually the family that's had a business for 2-3 generations, they've never sold one, right? This is going to be a big windfall for them. And so, it's an honor to be able to help them like that, right? So how do we help, right? How can I help? How can I help this business owner do whatever they're trying to do when it comes to either buying another company and bolting it on, or maybe selling part or all of what they've got, and just making it, more of a liquid investment for all their hard work, and that's how it kind of got started.
Whenever you first got started, was there any kind of like imposter syndrome, in the sense of like other people who'd been in the business like their whole career, and here you were, like you had gone through your own experience and it had kind of catapulted you into doing it? Was that ever like top of mind of like, should I really be doing this? Like, am I the right person for this? Or like, what did that look like?
I think maybe a little bit in the very beginning, but I started with one connection to a friend of mine that was a financial planner. And I said, hey, do you know anybody that needs help looking at this, like this service? And he said, yeah, I've got this friend of mine who's a client. He has this business. He's not sure how to go about selling it, what to do, And I had some other people. I had surrounded myself with some pretty good advisors back then. I'll say that because I knew it just enough to kind of be dangerous, but still knew that I had a whole lot to learn. And so, I would go to accountants or attorneys or whatnot, and other financial experts and say, hey, here's kind of what we're thinking, So in the very beginning, that was 2013, that for that first year, I did rely on them because I wanted to be able to tell those first clients, like, hey, it's not just me, okay? I'm going to be the person you're going to communicate with and stuff, but I was really kind of starting off by myself, essentially, and so I had that as a backstop, which was really good because, most of the situations that you come up against in what we do are options, okay? Like the client can choose option A, B, or C, depending on their basis or, their certain tax implications and things like that, where we have to pull in, that the accountant and the, the estate attorney or whatever, and say, okay, look, what if we do a FRE org, or what if we do a stock deal, or what if we do this or that, what are the possible outcomes, and so just knowing kind of how to quarterback that was really important for me to learn early on.
So over the last 10 years, do friends and family understand what you do, or do you still have people who are like, what does he do exactly, or like, what are you still doing that thing, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are still, even like my close family are like, tell me again, what is it did you do exactly? And that's just why the easiest thing to do is just say we help people buy and sell companies.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of detail in there, but they're like, okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. Something that we mentioned off camera was you talked about how accountants were a really great referral partner for you. And I know that many businesses, and you even alluded to it earlier, was that many businesses, they don't know what a balance sheet is. They don't have a P&L. They don't, especially many like service-based businesses. Like I have a customer who is an electrician who does very well for himself. He is a 30-year veteran. He's a master electrician. And so when he started his electrician business, it was a really easy segue, but he didn't know a lot about business.
Right.
So having the accountant as a referral partner, does that help avoid customers who come your way, or potential customers who, you start to work together and you realize they don't have any of their documents. They haven't maybe they haven't filed a tax return in 3 years or something. Has that been something intentional to make the onboarding process smoother, or is there another reason why accountants are your main partner?
Well, there's a lot that you put into that little paragraph, right? And I know the type of business owners that you're talking about, and usually the irony of the whole thing is those guys are like blue collar, hardworking. They get up early, they work hard, right? They could care less about a balance sheet, right? And most of them run their business just by cash based, and they'll say, well, I just called my bank and asked them how much I have in there. And I just, we roll like that. And I'm like, okay, that is not going to fly with a private equity group that's looking at your books, Yeah. So we have to educate them on just the buying process, there is a sophistication to, if you're running $100 million fund in Philadelphia, you have to have all of these documents so you can get it through an investment committee, right? So, but to your point on the accounting or the accountants, when a business owner decides to sell, okay, the first person that they're going to have this conversation with is not their spouse. Okay, it is their accountant.
Yeah, okay.
And here's why. And I learned this, okay, and I laughed too when I finally figured this out. It's because if the accountant shoots it down, they are already spared the wrath of having to bring it up at home. Yeah. But if the accountant says, hey, I think now's a good time, right?
Yeah.
Then they'll have that conversation with their spouse, all right? And if they get 2 votes yes, then hopefully the accountant will say, go talk to Black Diamond, and that's why.
Do you ever have people who, because, a lot of people, myself included, and I'm sure you as well, you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into your business. There's a lot of emotional energy and years of work that go into growing your business. Do you ever have conversations with people where their perception of the value of the business is very different from the actual value of the business?
Yeah, that happens. It happens a fair amount, I would say, especially now with interest rates that are higher, because sellers don't fully understand a lot of times why the interest rates rising have anything to do with the value of my business, right? It's the same business that it was 2 years ago.
And why does it, by the way?
Yeah, it's because the buyer / borrower, with interest rates higher, their debt service ratios are going to be lower for the same amount. So it costs them more money to service the debt, depending on the leverage of the transaction. So what does that really mean? It just means that, listen, if you're going to have an elevated valuation, then you're going to have to be more flexible. You might not get all the cash you want at closing. I mean, we can probably get you a good chunk of it, but you might have to do part in a seller's note, which is more and more common these days as long as it's done correctly, So things like that, I mean, definitely can be a part of the equation, I guess you'd say. I mean, some sellers, a few, not a lot, a few of them just have unrealistic expectations, that are not market-based. I mean, if you have a company and you think it's worth, $50 million, and we've brought you 17 offers and they're all between, 30 to 35. I mean, that's what the market's telling you, right? I mean, that's what it's worth. It's not worth 50, it's worth 30 to 35. And then you got to make that decision, So
Did you ever, go ahead.
If you decide not to sell, that's okay. If you die owning it, the next whoever is going to be left with it has to figure out, okay, what do we do with the estate and how does that, factor in?
It makes me think of, I don't know if you ever watched Shark Tank, but you always have people who come on who their perception of the value of their business is so way beyond what it actually is.
Yeah, I don't watch that show because that's just what I do every day pretty much, I mean, I have seen it, of course, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
So over the years, I mean, your business has grown a lot. I mean, I think when you and I first connected through BNI, I think it was you had hired your first person, and then you brought in your second person too. Now you have 7 people. What's it been like going from, the face of the business, the majority of the sales revenue falls on your shoulders, to now you have this other piece of like actually managing the business and you're managing the people. I think you have multiple locations now too, right?
We're all under one roof now.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The point being, though, I mean, we
did try that though, right on the heels of COVID.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect timing then, right?
Yeah. We've learned a lot.
Yeah. Well, how has your life changed as a business owner, having so many different moving parts now?
Yeah, it's been really hard. And I tell you what, every day is just, we may try something and then say, you know what, that didn't work that great. We're going to try something different. And we're still trying to figure it out, to be honest with you. The nature of what this business is can tend to be feast or famine. It's like, it's not like we sell 1,000 hamburgers a day. This is one analogy we use as a team in our Monday meetings sometimes. If you sell 1,000 hamburgers a day and you drop one on the floor, not a big deal, right? You just sell them, you get the next one ready to go. If you close 7 transactions in a year, you better not mess one up, right? I mean, and that's kind of the world we're in. It's like, okay, we have fixed expenses every month, right? We have certain things and obligations that we have to make sure that we're ready to meet. And how do we build a team and a culture to help as many people as possible and also deal with this? The biggest risk point with, a small investment banking firm is you don't want to be too dependent on a low number of transactions, right? Low number of transactions. It can be high dollar amounts, but you have to manage your monthly cash flow and do it responsibly. So we like to fail fast. If we're going to try something that doesn't work, hey, let's recognize it and move on and try something else. And now I'll say we have a few kind of younger, team members, and they've really developed a great culture. I mean, they work great together. They're all super smart, and I'm fortunate to have them. So now we kind of have that, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do next? What does that look like for us in the future? Because, we just don't want to stop where we are. But it's been very difficult for me. I mean, to put it just kind of mildly, because just my personality, like I think when you're a business owner, you tend to say, okay, how much do I really need to control? In the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't really want to, because, it's not about just a business owner and assistant trying to do some consulting stuff. If you really want to try to grow a business, and that's much easier said than done.
Mm-hmm. And going back to your comment on failing fast and making a decision and being quick to say like, okay, that didn't work. How do you remove like the emotionality of it? Because a lot of business owners, there's so much riding on a decision, or there's so much ego riding on a decision that, I mean, many people will carry a bad decision on for years. I mean, years, because there's almost sort of like this, I can outlast the bad decision until it finally becomes a good decision. You're talking about being agile and being quick to recognize when something's not pinging. How do you get over like the emotional pain of like, man, maybe I spent a lot of money there, or maybe that was a big, chunk of our resources and it's not going to work. Are you just used to it now today, or is there like I
I firmly believe that failing fast is the key to success. Like, listen, we don't have time to sit there. I mean, if you've got money that's already opportunity cost, or that it's sunk, and it's not going to work, then you got to rip that Band-Aid off and and just move on.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. We've done that a time or two, but we've learned so much along the way. Like one time, we spent like a year and a half really trying to come up with this software service that we thought was going to be awesome for business owners,
Mm-hmm.
and we put a lot of money into it and tons of time. And at the end of the whole thing, we sold like one for $99 or something like that. And we're sitting there looking at each other like, man, we thought this was going to like change the world, and we missed just the one simple fact that these business owners, what they were telling us that we didn't quite understand was, they're like, oh, this is really great, I'll do it tomorrow. There's no sense of urgency. They didn't have to do it. It didn't have anything to do with them selling their business right now. It was something, in the future. And they didn't think near what we thought,
and it's interesting too, like navigating customer feedback when like a customer is telling you, this is great, this is valuable, but it's not actually turning into revenue for your business.
Right.
And so I think it's tough sometimes to navigate. They're sending all the right signals, but they don't even realize that it's actually not contributing to our business like maybe we thought it would. So,
I love it. It's going to be so great. Will you pay for it? No. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it actually reminds me of my old consulting firm. They rolled out this program. It was it was a leadership consulting firm, but it was some program for women leaders in the CPG world. And like everyone had told them, this is great, we love it, we can't wait. Well, then we rolled it out and no one bought it. Like no one signed up for it. So there's that interesting distinction between what people tell you. And I know you're a reader too. I think there's a couple of books you really like to read. There's one I really like called The Mom Test. And the premise of it is, if you want to get actual feedback about an idea, first of all, you match that with the dollars that people have paid to show that they like it. But second of all, you ask the right people, your actual buyers. It's called the mom test because often what entrepreneurs do is when they have an idea, they go to their mom or their spouse or their, best friend. What do you think about this? And, what are they going to say? They're going to say, oh, I love it. It's great.
Right.
You're going to do so good.
That's right.
So passing the mom test is actually, don't ask your mom, go ask, one of these other people. So
that's good. That's good.
So, you're in a position, you're managing all these people. I think you're also a big sales guy, right? Like, don't you enjoy the sales process, or am I misremembering? Like you're in the field, I guess.
I love the process. I love, getting to know our clients, and we've had and still have some great relationships, from deals that we've had in the past. And sometimes they'll continue to do other deals with us in the future. So I never like the term sales. Like because I don't think we're selling anything really. It's just like, hey,
what do you call it to feel better about it?
Well, there is a sales part to it.
Is it called production, or like what's like when you talk to your team about it? Like what's like the language that you use?
Well, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what kind of phrase we would put on that. Maybe we should.
I don't know. I just thought you talk about Monday meetings. I envision like, hey, here's how we're doing. This is what do I know? I mean, you're the guy who runs the business, right?
So let's say we're working with a client that wants to buy a company. All right. So our role in that partly is to reach out to business owners that have a company that fit the criteria, right? So I don't look at it like we're calling them to try to sell them on this. I mean, we have a blank check in our hand in a sense, because our client's ready to spend a lot of money, So it's just more like, hey, we have a client so-and-so that's interested in making an acquisition in your industry, and you made our short list because we think you could be a good fit. You might spend a few minutes and see what you think. Maybe it's not, and that's fine. But if it is, then let's talk a little bit more, because it could change your life. Like, have you thought about what you're going to do when you want to retire, or how you might transition your own legacy, and what does that look like? There's a misconception that I have to sell all my business up front 100% on day one. And then what do I do? It's like, I don't know what I'm even going to do. And a lot of people have a hard time psychologically with that. And so, we can explain that you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I mean, you can sell 65% now or whatever, and, keep, working for 3 or 5 years. We can craft a plan that meets their retirement goals and criteria that makes them feel like, okay, at least I know now, what I'm going to do the next however long, So.
It's probably really rewarding too for someone. Like, I know post-COVID, there were even a number of people that I talked to who, after COVID, they were just like, hey, I think I'm just done. I think I'm just worn out with running this business.
Right.
But I imagine it's a good feeling to be able to give somebody a big check for all their hard work over the years.
I love it. I mean, we've had just some great closings, where people just tear up and they're just like, man, and there's just this passing of the torch kind of, which is neat to see.
Now, as we're wrapping up, I don't know how active your business is on social media, but one thing we talk a lot about on the podcast is social media. And, you're talking about a topic that is, there's obviously enormous experience that you're bringing to the table. One of the trends of the podcast is how social media tends to oversimplify or embellish the road to success. You've been running a business for 10 plus years. I would assume you probably consider yourself successful. Not yet.
It's funny. I don't think that much about it. I think the success is defined by the individual.
Yeah. Okay.
First of all. And I'm still very type A wired, like, just because we did something yesterday or last year. I mean, New Year's Day scares me to death because it's 0 on the income statement.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, we got to go. We got to get this thing done, And so that's how a lot of guys that are messed up like me are kind of wired, like, hey, we got to keep on figuring this thing out. It's not, you can never count on what you did in the past.
Do you ever miss the days of 9 to 5? The money comes in every 2 weeks. You don't really think much about it. The check comes in, direct deposit, what have you. And
no, because to me, life is there's so much more that's out there.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, no.
So what's next for you? I mean, for your business, for, the future of your business, what do you envision?
Yeah. Right now, for our business, we are trying to be very intentional about, okay, how do we grow to the next, what does that look like? Who do we need to hire? We've got 2 or 3 different options on the table that we're considering right now. And we need to execute on those plans, I think. We've got some great clients we're working with right now, and hopefully those transactions will be successful the next 12 to 18 months and that kind of thing. And just see where God leads us, to be honest with you. I mean, we've been fortunate, so far, and just trying to just get up every day and to keep working hard and see what happens.
Do you ever envision, you're managing 7 people? Would you ever want a business where you had 70 people? Or because some people, like, consciously, they have like a size in mind, but they don't want it to go necessarily beyond that. Are you more of the type where it's like, hey, as big as this thing goes, as long as I can manage it? Or do you have like, this is really kind of where I think our sweet spot is?
I used to think that when I was younger. I used to, like, oh, let's just make this thing big. But it's really hard. It's hard to go from ground zero to that in our space. So I think what's more important now, kind of the older I get, is just making sure you have the right people. And the numbers should take care of themselves. I mean, that right people helping the right clients, more people increases our capacity so we can help more. I mean, I firmly believe that as a small business owner, you would learn so much and your business will be better knowing someone at Black Diamond, you know, like whether or not dollars ever change hands. I mean, that's beside the point. It's really, let us educate you on what's out there when it comes to this type of stuff, you know, the structures, the formation, the exit planning, all that type of stuff. I mean, we get calls all the time that we're not necessarily signing those clients today, right? They're just like, hey, what about this or that? Or what's my company even worth? You know, like, oh, okay, we can help you with that. And then, hey, call us in a few years, you know, if you need additional help and that kind of thing. So I truly believe that. But we only have so much time in the day, right, Blake? So it's like, you know, we got to have the right people that can help more people, I guess.
Do you pay attention to any of like the chatter on like generational differences and like employment and?
Yeah, we've got some good examples of things we've learned too.
Okay.
But one thing I'll share, and this took me a minute to wrap my mind around. So one of the things we learned that was kind of interesting to me, there's this generation, most of our clients that want to sell are kind of in their 60s, right? And they're usually just extremely hardworking. And I love those business owners, like man, woman, whatever. They get it done, you know? And more of them are telling us, I want to sell my business and I don't want my children to own it. And some of these kids work in the business, right? And when we say, why is that, right? Why would you not want your kids to own it if they work in it? And they say, what they tell us is, I don't want to be older or dead and have it on my conscience if it doesn't work out in the future. So I'm like, that's interesting. So what they'd rather do, they'd rather sell now and convert it to cash and leave that as a gift, as inheritance, than have this thought that, you know what, if something happens, if there's multiple children and somehow they don't get along down the road or cousins or whatever, I don't want that on me.
Yeah.
Right. So sell it now.
Yeah.
And then they're going to be extremely wealthy, most of them, you know, so they would rather do it that way. So, okay.
Well, last question as we wrap up. What's your favorite business book?
Oh, man.
Because I know there's been a few you've really liked. What comes top of mind?
I have some odd answers to that question. Okay. You want just one?
Give me whatever comes to mind.
Okay. The best business book that I recommend, probably more than any other for entrepreneurs, is Experiencing God. And it's not really a business. I mean, it's not sold as a business book.
I haven't read it.
It's by Henry Blackby, I think, and another co-author. And here's why I say that. Okay, because you can read books on management. I mean, you commented on E-Myth when you came in, and you know we use EOS and E-Myth. We use a couple different things from those more popular management systems now, and those are great. All right. The older I've gotten, the more I've realized, you know what, if you're not on his plan, like it doesn't matter. You know, like if you're doing something that he doesn't have really designed for you to do, then all the great management books in that field are not going to fit you, but they still have great information in them. I mean, that whole shelf over there is grad's books from my grad program. I was in management and strategy and vision and marketing and all this great stuff, you know. But without that one that's like, hey, are you really doing what you're supposed to be doing? Like, are you on the plan? You know? Yeah. Like, that's the guiding one. And those authors do a fantastic job of just, asking questions like, how do you know when it's time to make a change? I get that call all the time. People will call me that are executives. I won't name the companies, but some of the bigger ones around here especially. And they all say, hey, don't tell anybody I'm calling you. They whisper and I start laughing and they're like, I hate my job. I want to do something. I want to go buy a company. And I talk them off the ledge a little bit. But is it time to make a change? Yeah. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. If it is, how do you know? And then if you know that part, then what do you do next? Right. These are big life questions. So that one is really, really good just to get you kind of centered on, okay, am I even doing what was designed for me to do at this point in my life? Then you can get into all the other ones. And then aside from that, there's a book called The Goal that's really good. That's more about my undergrad's industrial systems engineering. So I think process first.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's a great book.
Okay. Cool.
So those are the two I'd recommend.
Well, we're out of time today. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. Talking to Christian, not for our listeners. Listeners, of course, enjoyed it. So
this was fun. Thanks for getting to the bottom of your list and inviting me.
Yeah, anytime. Yeah. I'll see you again in 6 years. So
Okay.
no, for people who are listening who, I think there's two kinds of listeners. There's maybe someone who they own a business that they're thinking, man, I probably need to call Christian. But then there's probably someone else who they aren't ready to sell, but they think they might down the road. Is the best way for those people to connect you? Is it the same thing, or is there like a resource for someone to check out or something on your website? Like, what's the best way for people to start engaging with you?
Well, I would say, first of all, it's not me, Christian Baldwin, anymore. It's really Black Diamond Capital Advisory Firm, and our team of 7 here. Whether it's me or someone else, we love having those conversations. I mean, there's a lot of information on our website. It's great to start there. You can call us, and if you want to come visit or just have a introductory phone call or something like that, happy to do that. Like we said, how can we help you with whatever it is that's on your mind?
Okay. Christian, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Blake. It was fun.
Hey, for our listeners, if you enjoyed the podcast and you're a first-time listener, what the heck are you waiting on? Click the subscribe or follow button so you can keep getting good advice wherever you are. Don't forget also, if you enjoy the podcast, you want to advertise on the podcast, you can always reach out at blake@goodadvicecoaching.com, or you can support the podcast on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. And of course, we appreciate all our supporters who keep the podcast being as great as it is. All that to say, that's today's good advice, and we'll catch you later. See ya.